Well, the first thing to say, I think, is that we as the chemicals industry and Cefic recognise the need to address the problems of climate change, and therefore that carbon emissions have to be reduced. Now, that, of course, creates a challenge for the chemicals industry because we are in large part energy intensive, and therefore reducing our carbon emissions is going to be quite difficult and involve a measure of expense. I think the question which you also asked related to the ETS, and the ETS as an instrument for reducing carbon emissions is going to create particular problems for the chemicals industry because it is based on the idea of continually pushing up the price of carbon and therefore the costs to industry, in the belief that industry will then be able to come up with innovations which will then reduce those costs again. And that's far from clear. Industries in general will see a significant loss of competitiveness versus third country competitors. And in that case, we are likely to see carbon leakage. Now, linking that to your question about Eastern Europe, Eastern European countries are much nearer to immediate competitors, such as the Ukraine and Russia, than some other European countries. And the risk of carbon leakage, therefore, to those third countries just across the border is that much greater. And it should also be said that Eastern European industry has got a much harder job in terms of investing to increase efficiency to the sort of levels that are going to be required. The first thing that has to be recognised in the ETS is that for industries such as ours, it sets a benchmark standard of carbon efficiency, which is set at the level of the average of the top 10%. So these are levels which are currently achievable and have been achieved by some companies. And the ETS is not going to change that, and the current reforms are not going to change that. So we all have to try and meet the best standards possible for carbon efficiency. And having done that, we then ought to avoid any further carbon costs. Perhaps the biggest problem we see with the current reform proposals is that it may be, under those proposals, that even the best performers incur a carbon cost penalty, and that we would see as being unnecessary and unfair.